All right, so describe Operation Barbarossa. Why would Hitler turn on Stalin and the Soviet Union? What tactics did Germany use to invade deep into the Soviet Union? All right, so we talked about this quite a bit, and the start of Hitler's advancement with his foreign policy, right, and building into his advancement to the west and even the north, right. Now shifting his attention to the Soviet Union. Okay, so again, we're transitioning back to the European theater. We will go back to the Pacific theater, but with the timeline of events, yeah, come back to this. You guys watch me eat. Strange.
What? I didn't say nothing.
Quiet. All right, so as you're working, when we come around and check your bell ringers, you should have 5 of them. Yeah. All right, Operation Barbarossa. Okay, so we talked about Germany as they expanded into the north. We talked about Denmark, Norway, right? Moving into France. And we mentioned about how Germany took over France in how many days? How many days roughly was it? About? How long did it take Germany to take? One. Yeah, good job, right? So about 35 days it took Germany to overtake France. Okay, bitter rival, longtime rival. And now you see the success really of Hitler. Again, promising that he was going to get these lands back. Lebensraum, living space, breathing room for the German people. And at the same time, get back at those who burdened Germany after World War One. So where did he have France surrender? You guys remember? He had them surrender. Honor. Yeah, good job. So the rail car at Compiègne. So right outside of Paris. Okay. And this is the exact same rail car that Germany surrendered in World War One. So this was a way to throw salt in the world. Okay, again, to try to really show and inspire more nationalism back at home as he's victorious. Right? Hitler is not to throw over France. All right, good. So we even talked about some pictures he took in front of many landmarks. I guess one of them being the Eiffel Tower. Okay, trying to boost this national pride of the German people. All right, and then after he takes France, well, who's the next target? Who's the next target? Oh, yeah, Great Britain, good job. So, did he actually invade Great Britain? What was the plan? What was the attack plan? The invasion. Operation. Oh, yeah, Operation Sea Lion. Good job. Why didn't he go through it? Why didn't he go through it? Second Morse. Yeah, good job, right? So it took a lot of resources, a lot of time, a lot of effort, right? And when it came to his movements here, he just figured, well, it's just going to be way too much of an objective here. It'll be way too tall of a task. So he decided to do something else. And this was the intense bombing runs of many key cities all throughout Great Britain. And what were those bombing runs called? This event that lasted pretty long, a couple months here. Several months. Second Morse. The Blitz. Yeah, good job. Blitz. All right, so with these intense bombing runs here, we mentioned about how Britons survived. They held on. Even though a lot of them were living in the subway tunnels, a lot of them had to flee to the northern part of Great Britain to try to seek refuge. Okay, try to get out of these key industrial areas, these large urban cities. Right? But did they surrender? No. Who was that prime minister holding on here, making sure that Great Britain continue to fight on and continue to do their best? Go ahead, Matt. Winston Churchill, yeah, good job. And we also talked about the key success of the Royal Air Force and how they were duking it out with Luftwaffe over the skies. Radar helped, obviously, and many other factors. All right, by that time, the United States has yet to join the war. There were some acts here preventing the U.S. from trading with Great Britain. What were those acts called? Alana. The Neutrality Acts, good, good. All right, so now we're transitioning over. We talked about the war in the Pacific, started off with Pearl Harbor, right? And how the United States is really taking it to the chin. They are taking blows left and right. When it came to the fall of Philippines, Pearl Harbor, right? And finally, here we talked a little bit about the Doolittle raid. We mentioned about the Battle of Coral Sea. And now the United States is getting involved in the sport, which we'll talk more about when we return on Monday, and when and how the United States attacks Germany over in Europe. It actually doesn't start in Europe. It starts somewhere else. We'll mention here soon enough. Okay, all right. So with Operation Barbarossa, this is Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union. Okay. Again, what was that pact, that treaty called between Stalin and Hitler to try to prevent a two-front war from the very beginning? We wanted to take care of the Allies first before we went after the real target, the Soviet Union. What was that pact called? Chrissy said it earlier. Yeah, good job, Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Good, good. And we all mentioned about how this agreement just seemed a little weird. Mentioned with the political cartoons they showed, right? Yeah, Hitler and Stalin shaking hands right over top of Poland, right? But at the same time, behind their backs, there's one with a gun, another with a knife, and maybe they had their fingers crossed right behind their backs, showing that this alliance, this treaty, right, this agreement won't last too long. And we already mentioned with Hitler, did he follow the Treaty of Versailles? No. Did he follow the Munich Pact? No. You think he's going to follow this one with his bitter rival? No. The communists? No. All right. So with Operation Barbarossa, this is the largest invasion ever. Right? Over 2 million German troops marching throughout the Eastern Front here and expanding far into the Soviet Union. What tactic did they use? What tactic? Hi, Chris. Yeah, Blitzkrieg attacks, right? So we mentioned how successful they were at the start of the war against France, right? And as they rampage all over Western Europe, okay, the same tactics used in the Soviet Union. I didn't get to mention about this yesterday, but as the Germans are moving through the Soviet Union and cutting through them like a hot knife through butter, right? They actually destroy, literally rape and pillage many of these villages, these towns all throughout the Soviet Union. Okay. And it comes to a point at the end of the war, the Soviets lose over 27 million people. So you can imagine, right, how that would be a huge blow to the population, to the industrial factors of the Soviet Union after the war. Okay. And so much so that after the war, we actually had an agreement with the Soviets to split up Germany, split up Berlin, the capital, because of how much they faced. And without it, right, without the Soviets, chances are this war would have really drug on. Who knows if it would have won it? Never know. All right, so with the Soviets here, okay, the Germans are just brutally taking over. Like I said, we'll mention it with the Battle of Berlin, how the Soviets kind of get their revenge and how they call it the rape of Berlin, literally. I don't have to talk about that too much. You guys can kind of understand where that's going. But as you're diving deep in the Soviet Union, what were the three targets? What were the three cities that they were looking at they captured here? Put it up yesterday. Go ahead. Quiet. Stalingrad. Stalingrad is one of them. Yeah, good job. There's the name of Joseph Stalin. Also, today we'll talk about this, a pivot point to the Caucasus region where there's a lot of oil there. Right? For Hitler, right, if he can capture these key refineries, these oil producing areas, well, he could sustain this war for as long as possible against the United States and Great Britain. And obviously, a lot of the land, when it comes to resources, to feed his population for a long period of time, maybe forever, right? So, yeah, good. Stalingrad. Good, good, good. What else? Paul. Leningrad. Yeah, good job. So, Leningrad, which we know is what? What was the city's name beforehand? Mention about this. Alana. St. Petersburg. Yeah, good job. Now, St. Petersburg again. But yeah, we mentioned about this Peter the Great way back when, in the age of absolutism. Okay, and how he created the what palace there? What's that palace called? Connor. The Winter Palace. Yeah, good job. The city built on bones. All right, now Germany's advancing pretty far into it, and they capture St. Petersburg. Do they invade it? Do they actually send their troops in? Boston? Yeah, good job. Why do they do so? Why do they just go in guns and blazes? Yeah, good job, right? So rather than just maybe the risk of losing many soldiers trying to overtake the city and the resources given to try to take Leningrad, they decided to encircle it, right? To try to encircle it and cut it off of any type of resources coming in. All right, and I talked a little bit about the temperatures that would reach in Leningrad. And what temperatures would it reach? Below what? In some cases, negative 30 degrees, right? So if you're cutting off any type of the fuel supplies, resources coming in, like coal, let's say, oil, right? Chances are these people are going to freeze to death, which over 1 million people died in the siege of Leningrad, which is a little bit over a year, right? Over 1 million people because of just lack of food, lack of resources. A lot of people starved to death. They froze to death in these harsh conditions. All right. I do have a video attached to yesterday's video lesson. I'm not going to show it this time, but you guys get a chance to check it out. You guys remember, I forget his name, but the guy that does dirty jobs, yeah, he introduces it. It's pretty good. Does a good job. All right, with the siege of Leningrad, they don't invade it. They don't try to overtake it. They try to encircle it. They try to cut it off. All right, and then we talked a little bit about Moscow, yeah, the capital, but in all reality, okay, with the Soviets, just like when Napoleon came marching in, do you think they're just gonna, yeah, do you think they're just, if they care if the capital falls, yeah, they might care a little bit, but at the same time, they're just gonna keep moving everything back, right? You remember talking about the scorched earth policy, yeah, right? This way of just destroying everything so that they might deter your opponent, in that case, Napoleon. Well, something similar kind of happened here. And how the Soviets were just like, well, if they take Moscow, we'll just move everybody, the whole population back a little bit. It's not a big deal. Right? But in any case, you can imagine how many people, how many casualties were lost in this invasion alone. All right, so yeah, Stalingrad is the next aiming point, right? Again, for Hitler, he sees this as a morale booster, and for obviously the Soviets, this would crush their morale as Stalingrad is taken. This is named after Joseph Stalin, and at the same time, this is a key industrial area of the Soviet Union. Big population there. And at the same time, there's a pivot point to the Caucasus region that we talked about, where there's a lot of oil resources to continue to pump out this military power. So for this is a huge battle, is the most pivotal battle ever, right? When it comes to casualties and deaths and losses, it ranged up into the millions, right? So 2.2 million casualties, 1.2 million deaths in just this battle alone. So this was the largest battle when you think about just sheer death and casualties the world's ever seen. And again, the turning point in World War II. And the United States really didn't even fight in it. Oh, not at all. Okay, that's something to know. All right, so here is your terms. Obviously, they help as they're advancing into the West, but we'll mention that a little bit later. All right, here we go. Here we go. Stalingrad. There you go. One term. That's it. Maybe the Battle of Stalingrad you want to look up. Okay. It's not called Stalingrad anymore. After the war, they go through a process, the Soviets, of de-Stalinization, try to pull his name from many of these cities and the key areas because how brutal he was. Remember the 5-year plans? Gulag. Oh my gosh. I'll just put Battle of Stalingrad. There you go. All right. Okay. So with Stalingrad here, this was again the most, if not one of the most, if not the most Brutal battles of all time when it comes to casualties, when it comes to deaths, like I said, ranging into about 2 million people that died on obviously for both sides combined, and casualties when it comes to about 2 million deaths, about 1.2 million. So with this battle, it was brutal. Okay. And through the winter months, okay, the Germans really were halted at Stalingrad. And this is the turning point. Make sure you guys note that. This is the turning point in the European theater. From here on out, right, the Soviets are going to gain momentum, gain traction, and push the Germans back to their main border, right? And again, with the United States joining in 1941, again after Pearl Harbor, I moved into 1942. The Axis powers were at their height. Okay, it looked like they were just dominating both theaters when you look at North Africa and Europe with Italy and Germany, and then over in the Pacific with Japan. Okay, with the United States as they're joining in, okay, we talked about how they're just getting really crushed when it comes to losing the Philippines. But again, we talked a little bit about some of the movements here out in the Pacific where the U.S. is gaining some momentum. All right, but by 1942 here, with Germany, as they're invading in deep into the Soviet Union, well, they realized real quick, just like Napoleon, that the winters get pretty harsh, right? And that many of these armored vehicles and even tanks started to slow up as it was that cold. Many of the tanks, different types of oil, petroleum started to sludge up because it was, again, -20, -30 degrees. Also, with Germany, they thought that this war was going to be over pretty quick, that the Soviets would just give up after this huge invasion of the Soviet Union. But they continued to pump them out. And that's one thing to know about the Soviet Union and the war tactics. Even still to this day, with Russia, the war in Ukraine, they'll just throw numbers out there and, again, try to overwhelm the enemy. It's not like they're just worried about casualties or deaths. Okay, they're just going to continue to just overwhelm the opposition until eventually they break. That's exactly what happened at Stalingrad. Right, for Joseph Stalin, he realized that if Stalingrad falls, well, this is going to be the end of the war. And the Nazis are going to have control of this oil, these resources in the Soviet Union to last this war out for, who knows, be ever, right? So with that, Joseph Stalin threw everything he could. And with the siege of Stalingrad, the invasion of Stalingrad, Germany actually was more of a tug of war match. It was constantly overtaken by Germany, then taken back by the Soviet Union, and taken back by Germany and vice versa, right? And this was a different type of warfare that Germany was used to. So there for a while with blitzkrieg attacks, did they actually have to focus in one area for a long time? No, right? They just continue to roll through, continue to move through these battles and these villages, these towns, and continue to move in their benefit arms. But now at Stalingrad, because of really the harsh weather, because of the cloud coverage, well, the Luftwaffe really couldn't be used to its benefit. Also, you got to imagine the United States is joining in on the west, so Germany had to split up some of its troops, its forces, because, well, Italy wasn't doing their part, really, for me to do. But in any case, for that, right, with Stalingrad, the Luftwaffe was pretty much out of commission. They couldn't be used as what they wanted, right, with these blitzkrieg attacks as they did and expanded throughout the summer, right, early fall. As winter approached, well, things got a little dicey for Germany. Their troops weren't equipped with the right materials when it comes to the sheer weather alone. A lot of the German troops froze to death, right? So much so with this battle, if you're involved in it, there is a 2% chance that you're going to walk out of there alive. That's just how brutal this battle was. Okay, and just the amount of casualties and deaths that this battle ensued during this war. All right, so with Stalingrad, again, there's many stories which at the end of the unit, we'll see, right? We have some time. I'll show you a movie called Enemy at the Gates. Try not to watch it. You already saw it. But anyway, it's a great movie. It talks about Vasily Zaitsev, which was a Soviet sniper, and his really doings in this war, and especially at Stalingrad to help the Soviets win this conflict. But again, with the Luftwaffe out of commission, it slowed up Germany, right? The sheer weather, again, ill-equipped too. They didn't have the resources, materials to, really have a long-lasting battle against Stalingrad. And again, a lot of the German troops just froze to death. A lot of their tanks, okay, just kind of sludged up because how cold it was. And with Stalingrad, the cloud cover with the snow and just the intense environment, right, caused some issues. Also, this was more of an urban fight scene. Okay, for Germany as they're marching through Soviet Union, well, obviously it's more just kind of open base, like rural grounds, really, as they're just continuing to march and pummel through the Soviet Union. But as they get to Stalingrad, Yeah, this is city to city, building to building, right? Okay, as they're marching through these streets, fighting from door to door, literally, in this urban area. Okay, so this environment's a lot different. And when you're trying to take a city, it's going to be a lot more difficult to do. The Soviets, again, were strong when it came to just continue to pump out tanks, right? And pump out materials and equipment as this battle was ensuing. Can you imagine that, right? Here you are trying to work and try to create as many military supplies as possible as you're literally getting bombarded by the Germans. It's crazy, crazy to imagine. Also with the Soviets, like I said, they weren't just going to give up. They're just going to continue to fight to the very end, right? And there's many policies here, this no step back policy that Stalin wanted to ensure with his troops. If anyone was seen retreating, all there was talks that and rumors thoughts that if you try to retreat or run away, any of the officers standing behind would actually kill you before you could even step back. So that's just how important this battle really was. The Soviets again would have lost it. Well, probably the end of it. So that's why this no step back policies were created. And with Khrushchev, you'll hear a little bit more about him later down the road with the Cold War. He was a general of the Soviet Union during this time. Okay, and made sure that these troops wouldn't flee. Also, the Soviets, they were low in resources. Again, one of the biggest hindrances for them is that their lack of industrialization was one of their downfalls, right? Okay, one of their hindrances, right? So with that, a lot of these troops literally went out there with maybe a magazine of ammo, and that was it. Okay, they were advised, they were told, hey, if someone dies in front of you, you're calm right here. Just pick up their gun, right? Do your best. Can you imagine that? Here you are getting out. Hey, get out there. No, I don't have a weapon for you, but once that guy dies in front of you, there it is. Okay. So you can just imagine how that would just be a, I don't know, I don't even know how you get motivated for that. Yeah, this sounds great. I can't wait to go out and fight. Not really. Yeah, literally running in, marching into gunfire that is coming at you from the Germans. Okay, again, just trying to pick up any type of weapons that are on the ground to try to fight back. So there is a lot of talks about that with Stalingrad. And the movie kind of does that a little bit. It tells that story. But again, it's interesting here to think about. But Stalingrad, main thing to note with your vocab, I hope you write that down, is that this is the turning point in European theater. Right? This is now the Germans are halted, they're stopped finally, and the Soviets are going to push them all the way back to Berlin, okay, which will end in 1945. Yeah, okay. So this just really talks a little bit about how the United States is going to focus first in Europe because they realize that Germany is the biggest threat. So they're putting a lot of emphasis, a lot of resources over to this invasion into Europe, which we'll talk more about. That starts in North Africa. And obviously, you guys know with the D-Day invasion, that's later to come. So for Germany, they're kind of fighting a three-front war, if you think about it. So yeah, at the same time, the U.S. is fighting Japan out in the Pacific Ocean. All right, is there any questions? Any questions? Okay, all right, so that's all I have. I'll have your grade in for your bell ringers shortly. Good stuff.